Not every vehicle is a good idea. Some of them are poorly designed, unreliable, inconvenient, or all three at once. And yet, people keep buying them. Over the years, several vans have earned a reputation for poor performance, questionable technical equipment, and owners' frustration. But despite all this, they are still on their way, and they're still selling. Today, we present a list of the 8 worst vans ever created, and try to understand why people keep buying them anyway.
Make sure to subscribe and smash the like button.
The Ford Windstar, produced from 1995 to 2003, is more than just a failed minivan. It is a textbook example of how a vehicle can permanently damage trust between a manufacturer and its customers. The Windstar didn't merely disappoint, it repeatedly broke down in ways that were predictable, well-documented, and devastating to the people who relied on it. For many families, this wasn't an inconvenience. It was financial and emotional exhaustion wrapped in a vehicle that was supposed to provide reliability and safety. At launch, the Windstar promised to be a strong competitor in the minivan segment, offering space, comfort, and the reassurance of the Ford name. On the surface, it looked like a sensible family vehicle, but ownership quickly revealed a pattern that became impossible to ignore. Catastrophic transmission failures were not rare events, they were common expectations. Many transmissions failed suddenly, often without warning, leaving owners stranded and facing repair bills that exceeded the value of the van itself. These failures occurred so frequently that they defined the Windstar's reputation.
As if that weren't enough, the rear axle issues turned a reliability problem into a safety crisis. Corrosion-related axle failures led to recalls after reports of axles snapping while driving, sometimes at highway speeds. This wasn't wear and tear, it was structural failure. Add to that persistent engine problems, including head gasket failures that caused overheating and internal damage, and the Windstar began to resemble a collection of known weaknesses rather than a cohesive machine. What made the situation worse was the frequency. Many Windstars never reached 100,000 miles before suffering major mechanical collapse. For a family vehicle, that is unforgivable. These were vans purchased to transport children, commute to work, and handle daily life, yet they demanded constant attention and repair. Breakdowns were not exceptions, they were part of the ownership experience. And yet, people still buy Windstars, not because they believe in them, but because they are cheap, often extremely cheap. On the used market, Windstars appear as tempting solutions for buyers with limited budgets or urgent needs. Desperation plays a powerful role. When a family needs space immediately and funds are scarce, warnings are often ignored in favor of immediate relief. The Windstar survives in this narrow space where price outweighs history.
But that history matters. The Windstar's failures were not isolated to one bad year or a rare defect. They were systemic, repeated across generations, and documented extensively by owners, mechanics, and regulators. Buying one today is not a gamble, it is a calculated risk with a known outcome. The Ford Windstar stands as a cautionary tale because it shows how quickly goodwill can be destroyed when reliability collapses. It reminds us that trust, once lost, is nearly impossible to recover. A cheap price cannot erase a legacy of failure, and affordability does not compensate for predictability in breakdowns. The Windstar didn't just fail as a vehicle, it failed the people who depended on it, and that is why its reputation endures as a warning rather than a memory. The Volkswagen Routan, sold from 2009 to 2014, is a perfect example of how branding can collapse under the weight of reality. On paper, it carried the Volkswagen badge, a name associated with German engineering, disciplined design, and a certain expectation of thoughtful construction. In practice, the Routan was not a Volkswagen in any meaningful mechanical sense. It was a Chrysler minivan wearing German clothing, and that mismatch between expectation and reality is what defined its failure. The Routan shared its platform, drivetrain, and core components with Chrysler's minivans of the same era. That meant it inherited the same chronic problems,
particularly transmission failures and persistent electrical issues. These were not rare defects or early production glitches. They were familiar weaknesses already well known in the vehicles it was based on. For buyers who believed the VW badge signaled a higher standard of durability or engineering oversight, the experience was jarring. The van did not behave like a Volkswagen because it wasn't one. What made the situation worse was confusion on both sides of the ownership experience. Volkswagen dealers were expected to support a vehicle built largely with Chrysler parts, systems, and logic. This created delays, misdiagnoses, and frustration when repairs were needed. Owners often found themselves caught between two corporate worlds, neither of which fully claimed responsibility for the product. Parts availability became inconsistent, and long-term support deteriorated quickly once the Routan was discontinued. The van also suffered from an identity crisis. It didn't drive like a traditional Volkswagen, nor did it fully embrace the utilitarian role of a domestic minivan. For Chrysler buyers, it offered no advantage over cheaper, better supported alternatives. For Volkswagen loyalists, it felt like a betrayal of brand values. That confusion translated directly into poor resale value, as the market quickly recognized the Routan as an oddity rather than a hidden gem. Despite all of this, people still buy the Routan today. The reasons are simple and predictable. The Volkswagen badge still carries psychological weight, and used prices are often extremely low. For buyers unfamiliar with its origins, it can appear to be a bargain, a European-branded minivan at a domestic price. In reality, that low cost reflects the market's understanding of what the Routan truly is. The reason people shouldn't buy a Routan is equally clear. Its problems are not speculative. They are inherited, documented, and unresolved. Transmission issues, electrical faults, and declining parts support make long-term ownership increasingly risky. As time passes, the lack of clear manufacturer commitment only worsens the situation. The Volkswagen Routan stands as a lesson in what happens when branding is used as a substitute for engineering. It shows that a badge cannot change a vehicle's DNA, and expectations cannot be rebadged along with sheet metal. Buyers expected German engineering and received Detroit problems, and the gap between those two realities is why the Routan is remembered not as a collaboration, but as a cautionary tale. The Mercedes-Benz Metris, sold from 2016 to 2023, should have been an easy success. It wore one of the most powerful luxury badges in the world, occupied a useful middle ground between compact vans and full-size workhorses, and promised European practicality with Mercedes credibility. Instead, it became a commercial disappointment, not because it was unusable, but because it failed to deliver what the name on the grille implied. From the driver's seat, the problem revealed itself quickly. The Metris was underpowered for its role, especially in North American driving conditions. Its four-cylinder engine struggled under load, and acceleration felt strained even when the van was empty. For a vehicle intended to carry cargo, passengers, or both, this lack of effortless power undermined confidence. Mercedes had built a van that asked to be worked, but didn't feel willing to do the work. Ownership only deepened the frustration. Maintenance costs reflected Mercedes pricing, not Mercedes value. Routine service, parts, and repairs were expensive, often rivaling those of true luxury vehicles, yet the driving experience and durability did not justify the expense. Fuel economy, one of the areas where a mid-size van should shine, was merely average, erasing one of the strongest arguments for choosing the Metris over larger, thirstier alternatives. Perhaps the most damaging element was the interior. Expectations for Mercedes quality are high, and rightly so. The Metris failed to meet them. Hard plastics, utilitarian finishes, and minimal refinement made the cabin feel closer to a budget commercial vehicle than a product of a premium brand. For buyers expecting a scaled-down Sprinter with luxury DNA, the reality felt like a compromise in every direction. And yet, the Metris continued to sell. The reasons were predictable. The Mercedes-Benz badge carried prestige,
especially for businesses that wanted their fleet to project professionalism. The European van aesthetic appealed to buyers seeking something different from domestic options. Fleet contracts also played a role, prioritizing brand image and standardized purchasing over long-term ownership satisfaction. But these reasons don't change the core issue. The metrics asks buyers to pay luxury brand prices for mid-tier performance and materials. It costs Mercedes money to own, without delivering Mercedes quality in return. Over time, that imbalance becomes impossible to ignore, particularly for private owners who feel every maintenance bill and every compromise in daily use. The Mercedes-Benz metrics stands as a reminder that a badge alone cannot carry a vehicle. Luxury is not a logo, it is an experience built from power, refinement, and durability working together. When those elements are missing, the result is not premium practicality, but expensive disappointment. The Chevrolet Astro, produced from 1985 to 2005, is one of those vehicles that inspires genuine affection while simultaneously earning serious criticism, and that contradiction is exactly why it refuses to disappear. To many owners, the Astro represents durability, simplicity, and old-school toughness. To anyone who looks at it through the lens of modern engineering and safety, it represents a deeply compromised design that outlived its time. The Astro is beloved, but it is also a safety nightmare. From the moment it entered service, the Astro was built differently from most minivans. Its body-on-frame construction gave it strength and longevity, especially for towing and hauling, and its rear-wheel drive and available all-wheel drive layouts made it uniquely capable compared to front-wheel drive competitors. Mechanically, it was straightforward, familiar to generations of mechanics, and easy to keep running with basic tools. These traits earned it loyalty, particularly among contractors, outdoor enthusiasts, and drivers who valued toughness over refinement. But that same design philosophy carried severe consequences. Crash safety was never the Astro's strength, and by modern standards, it is dangerously inadequate. Its structure and driving position placed the driver close to the front axle, offering minimal crash protection. Poor crash test ratings were not a surprise, they were an inevitability. The van's mass and rigidity did not translate into occupant safety, and in many scenarios they made impacts more severe rather than more survivable. The driving experience only reinforced its age. The seating position was awkward, visibility could be deceptive, and handling felt truck-like in the least flattering sense. Combined with an aging V6 that was known for long-term reliability issues, especially as mileage climbed, the Astro demanded constant attention. Add to that fuel economy that was poor even by the standards of its own era, and daily use became increasingly difficult to justify. Yet, people continue to buy Astros. Rear-wheel drive and all-wheel drive remain rare in the van world, and the Astro's simplicity is appealing in an age of complex electronics. Nostalgia plays a powerful role as well. Many buyers remember these vans as reliable workhorses from a different time and believe that toughness equals safety. It's an understandable emotional connection, but it's a misleading one. The reality is that modern safety standards have moved far beyond what the Astro can offer. Airbag technology, crumple zones, stability control, and advanced driver assistance systems have redefined what it means to protect occupants. The Astro lacks not just the newest features, but the fundamental structural philosophies that make modern vehicles safer in the first place. The Chevrolet Astro survives because it represents a past approach to utility that some people still value. But survival does not equal suitability. What once felt rugged now feels risky, and what once felt simple now feels exposed. The Astro is not dangerous because it is old. It is dangerous because it was never designed for the world we drive in today. The Nissan Quest, produced from 2004 to 2016, is a clear example of what happens when a vehicle loses sight of its purpose. A minivan has a simple job: maximize space, usability, and reliability for families. Nissan, however, tried to make the Quest cool, futuristic, and different from its competitors, and in doing so, created a vehicle that looked interesting, but worked against itself in everyday use.
The result was a minivan that forgot what it was supposed to be. From the outside, the Quest stood apart. Its styling was unconventional, almost concept car-like, and it promised something more modern than the conservative vans dominating the segment. Inside, that same desire to be different led to an awkward interior layout that prioritized design over function. Controls were placed where they looked interesting rather than where they were intuitive. Storage was compromised. Visibility and flexibility suffered. For a vehicle meant to serve families, the Quest often made basic tasks feel more complicated than necessary. The most serious flaw, however, was mechanical. Nissan's reliance on CVT transmissions became the Quest's defining weakness. These transmissions developed a reputation for premature failure, overheating, and erratic behavior. When they failed completely, and replacement costs frequently exceeded the actual value of the van. This single issue overshadowed every positive aspect of ownership and turned what should have been a practical long-term vehicle into a financial liability. Performance did little to compensate. Despite its size, the Quest felt sluggish, especially under load. Acceleration was uninspiring, and the driving experience lacked the confidence expected from a family hauler. Combined with poor resale value, the Quest quickly became a vehicle owners wanted out of rather than one they planned to keep. And yet, people still buy them. Low used prices make the Quest tempting for budget-conscious shoppers. Its unique styling appeals to those who want something different from the typical minivan silhouette. The seats are comfortable, and on the surface, the van can feel pleasant during a test drive. These factors are often enough to override deeper research. But the reality is difficult to escape. The known widespread transmission issues alone are enough to make long-term ownership risky. When a single repair can cost more than the entire vehicle is worth, affordability becomes an illusion. The Nissan Quest is not misunderstood. It is accurately judged. It is a minivan that tried to be stylish instead of dependable, and in doing so, failed the very role it was designed to fulfill. The Ford Transit Connect, sold from 2010 to the present, was introduced with a clear promise: a compact, city-friendly cargo van that could handle urban work without the bulk and cost of a full-size commercial vehicle. In theory, it was exactly what small businesses and families living in dense environments needed. In reality, it became a vehicle defined by compromise, managing to fall short for nearly everyone who depended on it. The Transit Connect is not a complete failure, but it is a deeply unsatisfying one. From the start, the biggest issue was power. The engines offered in the Transit Connect were underpowered for a vehicle expected to carry cargo, tools, or passengers on a daily basis. Acceleration felt strained, even when lightly loaded, and when fully packed, the van often struggled to keep pace with traffic. Highway merging, hill climbing, and sustained speeds highlighted just how narrow its performance margins were. This weakness was magnified in early models by transmission issues that damaged confidence and increased long-term ownership costs. Practical limitations followed closely behind. Towing capacity was minimal, eliminating versatility for businesses that needed to pull even small trailers. Rear suspension components wore out faster than expected under regular use, especially in delivery service, where constant loading and unloading was part of daily life. These were not abuses of the vehicle, but exactly the tasks it was marketed to perform. For families, the story was no better. While compact on the outside, the interior lacked the refinement and flexibility expected from a modern people mover. Ride quality was utilitarian at best, noise levels were high, and comfort suffered on longer trips. It didn't offer the space of a true van or the polish of a crossover, leaving it awkwardly positioned between categories. And yet, the Transit Connect continues to sell. Its compact size makes it appealing in tight urban environments. The Ford badge inspires familiarity and trust. Growing demand for last-mile delivery has kept it relevant, especially for fleets that value maneuverability over capability. These factors sustain its presence, even as its shortcomings remain well known. The problem is that the Transit Connect compromises everything without excelling at anything. It is not large enough to work hard, not strong enough to be truly versatile, and not refined enough to serve comfortably as a daily family vehicle. What was meant to be a clever solution became an example of how narrowing a vehicle's mission too far can leave it unable to fully satisfy anyone. The Dodge Grand Caravan, sold from 2001 to 2020, is one of the most influential minivans in America for all the wrong reasons. It didn't dominate the market because it was the best. It dominated because it was cheap, familiar, and everywhere. For nearly 2 decades, it defined the lowest acceptable standard for family transportation, and in doing so, it quietly normalized the idea that minivans are supposed to wear out, break down, and be discarded rather than preserved. On the surface, the Grand Caravan delivered exactly what many buyers thought they wanted. It offered space, sliding doors, and a price tag that undercut nearly every competitor. Dealerships were plentiful, parts were cheap, and rental fleets ensured that millions of people became familiar with it, whether they wanted to or not. That familiarity created trust, even when the vehicle itself did little to earn it.
Ownership, however, told a different story. Automatic transmission failures became infamous, often appearing well before what most owners would consider acceptable mileage. These were not isolated incidents, but recurring patterns across multiple generations. Suspension components wore out quickly, leading to sloppy handling and constant repair. Interiors aged poorly, with plastics cracking, fabrics tearing, and trim failing under normal use. What should have been a durable family environment often felt temporary from the start. Safety was another area where the Grand Caravan fell behind. As competitors advanced with better crash structures, more airbags, and modern driver assistance features, the Grand Caravan lagged noticeably. Cost control dictated priorities, and safety innovation was rarely at the top of the list. The result was a van that felt increasingly outdated, even as it continued to sell.
Despite all this, people kept buying them. The entry price was the lowest in the segment. Fleet sales and rental exposure reinforced the idea that this was simply what a minivan was. For buyers under financial pressure, the Grand Caravan appeared to be a solution, offering immediate utility at minimal upfront cost. But that low price came with a hidden cost. Repairs, downtime, and early replacement erased much of the initial savings. The Grand Caravan became a false economy, cheap to buy but expensive to live with. Over time, it trained consumers to expect failure as part of ownership, lowering standards not just for Dodge but for the segment as a whole. The Dodge Grand Caravan didn't just reflect declining expectations, it helped create them. It stands as a reminder that popularity does not equal quality, and that affordability without durability is not value at all. The Chrysler Town & Country, produced from 2008 to 2016, stands as one of the clearest examples of how a vehicle can look ideal on paper and collapse completely in real life. It was marketed as the premium American minivan, a step above the ordinary, offering luxury touches that promise to turn family transportation into something refined and comfortable. Leather seats, infotainment systems, power everything, stow-and-go seating, and a smooth ride made it appear to be the perfect blend of practicality and upscale appeal. But ownership revealed a very different reality, one defined not by comfort, but by constant failure. The fundamental problem was reliability, or more accurately, the lack of it. Transmission failures became one of the Town & Country's most notorious traits, often occurring well before 100,000 miles. These failures were not minor inconveniences. They were catastrophic and expensive, frequently rendering the van undrivable and forcing owners to choose between massive repair bills and walking away entirely. For a vehicle marketed as a long-term family solution, this alone was enough to shatter confidence. Electrical issues compounded the damage. The Town & Country became infamous for unpredictable electronic failures that affected nearly every system in the vehicle. Dashboards lit up with warning lights, Infotainment systems froze or died, sensors failed without explanation, and basic functions behaved erratically. Power sliding doors, one of the van's signature features, often malfunctioned, opening when they shouldn't, refusing to close, or failing altogether. What was meant to feel luxurious instead felt fragile and unreliable. Engine stalling issues added another layer of frustration and danger. Sudden loss of power, sometimes at speed, turned everyday driving into a source of anxiety. Owners didn't just complain about these problems, many simply gave up. The pattern was clear across owner reports and mechanic experiences: repeated breakdowns, escalating costs, and diminishing trust.
And yet, people still buy Town & Countries. The reasons are understandable. Used prices are extremely low, making them seem like a bargain. The interiors are genuinely comfortable when everything works. Nostalgia for the Chrysler name and its role in popularizing the minivan continues to influence buyers who remember better days.
The Chrysler Town & Country didn't fail because it lacked features. It failed because it couldn't support them. It promised luxury, but delivered economy car reliability at premium repair costs. In the end, it became a van that taught owners a hard lesson. Comfort means nothing when you can't trust the vehicle to get you home.